Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Kof Lamed Zayin. Yesterday, we saw a baraita that says if someone leaves a will and he says, after I die, I want Mr. A to inherit. And after A dies, then B should inherit, and after B dies, C should inherit. So as long as they die in that order, then the land will go from A to B to C. Very good. But what if he says this, and then this original owner who made the proclamation, he dies, it goes to A. But now B dies while A is still alive. Then what happens? It does not go to C, because it can only get to C from B. Only B can give it to C when B dies. But in this case, B never receives it because B is already dead when A dies, and therefore cannot go straight from A to C. It has to go in order. So what does happen to it? This baraita says that all the land will go to the heirs of A. In other words, it stays in A's possession. This baraita assumes that A acquires the property itself, the land itself, not just the right to use the produce, but actually owns the land. That's why he keeps it in his family. That is baraita number one. We start off today with another baraita that contradicts it. V'hatanya yachzeru liyosheh noten. Or another baraita, the same exact case. The original owner dies. He gives it to A. Then B dies while A is alive. And this baraita says it goes back to the heirs of the original owner. According to this, A did not have the land itself, otherwise he would be able to keep it in his family. His heirs would take it. But rather, he only had the right to produce. According to this, when the original owner says, A, you take it, he means you can take the produce while you're alive. Then B gets the produce, then C gets the produce. But if something gets messed up along the way, then who has the ownership of the land itself? The original owner, and it'll go to his heirs. So we see that there are contradictory baraitot. So what do we do with that? Gemara answers, Tana'ehi. In fact, it's a machloket between two Tanaim, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. As we see in the following baraita, the Tanya. Nechasai lecha ve'acharecha lifloni, v'yarad rishon u'machar ve'achal, hasheni mosi meyad halakochot dibre Rabbi. If someone says, I want all my land to go to you, A, and then it should go to B. And let's say A, he went to the land and he sold it or consumed it. He sold the land to someone else or consumed it in such a way that it ruined it and was not worth the same amount anymore. So if he sold it and then A dies, and now it's supposed to go to B, right? But he already sold it to a third party, to some buyer. According to the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the B can go after that buyer and get it back. Why? That means that A never had a right to sell it in the first place. So according to the B, in this current understanding, only the produce goes from the original owner to A. So A, you have a right to take the produce, but you don't have a right to sell the land. And therefore that buyer never had a right to own it. And when A dies, B can go and get the land back. So according to the B, we're saying it's only the produce. Whereas Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, En lasheni ela ma sheshiyer rishon, that the second guy only has whatever the first guy left over. In other words, the original owner dies, everything goes to A. A sells some of the land, then dies. B cannot go after that land, which means it's a valid sale. That means A actually owned the land itself. This would be consistent with the first baraita, the baraita that we saw yesterday. So Rashbag is like the first baraita we saw yesterday, and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi would be like this baraita, that it's only the produce that goes to A. According to Rashbag, if A sold part of the land and kept part of the land, then B can, of course, gets whatever is left, whatever A still has. But he can't go after what was sold because that was sold because A had the property rights itself. Okay, good. So now we can give names to those two baraitot and resolve that problem. But now we have another problem, a contradictory baraita to this very one. Urminhi nechasai lecha v'acharecha lifloni yored rishon mocher ve'ocher divrei Rabbi. In this version of the baraita, if someone says, I want to give you my property, and after you, Mr. A, goes to B, then A is permitted to go down to the property and sell it and consume it. That means, according to the B, he can sell it. This is the opposite of what we said over here, where if A sells it, then B can go after that land and get it back, meaning A cannot sell it. So this is a contradiction. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, en larishon ela achilat perot bilvad. And Rashbag in this second baraita says that the first guy, A, can only eat the produce, but he cannot sell the land. Now, this is also the opposite of what we said here. In the first Baraita, Rashbag says that whatever A sold, is a final sale, is a good sale, and B only gets whatever A still has. So that means A does own the land and can sell it. But in this second Baraita, Rashbag says that A can only take the produce, but cannot sell the land. So now we have a double contradiction. Kashya ad Rabbi ad Rabbi, ud Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel ad Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. We have a contradiction between the two statements of Rabbi and the two statements of Rashbag. And we answer, Rabbi ad Rabbi la kashya, ha legufa, ha lepera. There's no problem between the two statements of Rabbi. The first one is talking about the land itself. When it comes to the land itself, if A decides to sell it, it's not a valid sale, and B can get it back. So really, he only gets the produce. And this second braita that says that he can sell it, it didn't mean the land. Is referring to the produce only. He can sell the produce or he can eat the produce. And so really the B is consistent. And these statements here, when it says sell, is not referring to his ability to sell the land. He cannot sell the land. If he does sell the land, B can go and get it back. And so the B is good. The B thinks that only when the original owner dies, he is only giving over the produce to A and then to B and then to C. And there's also no problem for Rashbag. The Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel ad Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel lakashya ha lechatechila ha di'avad. The second baraita is talking about lechetechila. Lechetechila, Rashbag is saying the A should not sell the land itself, only the produce. Lechetechila, he agrees that this is the proper thing to do. Why? Because the original owner, this is what was his wish. He wanted A to enjoy the produce, but not to destroy the land and not sell the land. And then he wanted B to have the produce and C to have the produce, and he wanted the land to stay intact. That was his initial will, and therefore that's what A should do, lechatechila. And however, the first baraita is talking about b'di'avad. Let's say A, even though he wasn't supposed to, it's not the right thing to do because it's against the wishes of the deceased, but let's say he goes ahead and sells the land, well then it is a sale, right? Because in effect he is giving over the land itself to Mr. A, and therefore A has a legal right to sell it. He should not do so lechetechila, but b'di'avad it will go. And so that's how we answer the question. And so we remain with this the same distinction according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. The original owner is giving over only the produce, and so that if there's a break in the chain of transmission, if B dies before A, then the original land goes to the heirs of the original owner, because he never gave away the land to begin with. Whereas, according to Rashbag, the original owner gives the land itself to A, and A can sell it b'di'avad. If he sells it, it is a valid sale, although he shouldn't do so lechatechila. Amar Abaye, ezehu rasha arum, ze hamasi asa limkor b'nechasim k'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Abaye says about this distinction between the lechatechila and b'di'avad, he says, who is a cunning, wicked person? Even wicked people can sometimes be very smart. Some of the most evil people are very smart, and they use their cunning in order to find ways within the law to do things that are improper. So what is an example of someone who is evil and cunning? That's someone who gives advice to someone else to sell the land as per Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. In other words, let's say you had a case like this. Someone says, Mr. A, I want you to get the land, and then I want it to go to B. And then that guy dies. Now A has it. A is thinking, okay, I'll just take the produce because then the land has to go to B. A wicked, cunning person would go to Mr. A, says, hey, do you know what? I know they're not going to tell you this because they don't want you to do it. But if you sell the land, you can get money for it. Go sell the land. You'll get $1 million for the land. And then that's it. When B cannot take that away. And it's permitted to do that. B'di'avad, yeah, but now you'll have the money. So it's improper to tell someone to do that because that's using a cunning for a wicked purpose. Although it is a valid sale, one should not do so. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha k'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, umodeh shim netanan b'matenat shechiv mera lo asa kelum. Rabbi Yochanan says the halacha is like Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So that if A sells the land while he's alive, it's a valid sale. He owns the land, he can do so. However, even Rashbag would agree that if Mr. A gave the land away or sent it as a gift while he was on his deathbed, then that's an invalid gift. And when A dies, it will in fact go to B. Now, why is that? If A owns the land, and while he's healthy, he can sell it or give it away. So how come when he's on his deathbed, it does not work? Mai ta'ama? Amar Abaye, matenat shechiv mera lo kana ela le'achar mita, uchvar kedamo acharecha. Abaye explains, because the gift of someone on his deathbed only takes effect after he dies. It's a moment after he dies, then it takes effect. But at that point, it's already too late because the original stipulation of the original owner who said acharecha will kick in before the gift of the shechiv mera. So, therefore, again, let's say what the case is. The original owner said, I want to go to A and then to B. And when does it go? It goes at the moment of A's death. It switches right to B. That goes at the exact moment. Okay, good. So now the original owner dies. Mr. A has it. If Mr. A gives it away while he is alive, that's okay because he actually owns the land itself. He can sell it while he's alive. That's fine. But if on his deathbed he says, I want this land to go to my friend, some other guy, not B. And then he dies. At the very exact moment of death, the original condition kicks in and it goes to B. A moment after that, right, 1 millisecond later, then we say, oh, what did the shechiv mera want? What did he say on his deathbed? Now that kicks in. Oh, he wants to give this land to his friend? No, sorry, it already goes to B. So that's the explanation. Now we ask, did Abaye really say that the gift of someone on his deathbed happens after death, a moment after death? But we have another tradition that asks the gift of someone on his deathbed, when does it take effect? Abaye says, at the moment of death, with death. Rava says, no, a moment after death. So here we see that Abaye himself thinks it happens at the moment of death, but right before Abaye answered this question, assuming that it happens a moment after death. So now we have a contradiction between two statements of Abaye. And the answer is, Hadar Abaye mahi. Abaye changed his mind. This was the second thing we quoted, that where Abaye says it happens with death. That's what he said originally, but he changed his mind, and now he thinks he agrees with Rava, and it happens after. And we ask, how do you know this is the one that he changed his mind from? Maybe this is what he really thinks, and the first thing he said was it's after death, and then he changed his mind then to say it's with death. How do you know which one, which opinion was the original, and which one he changed his mind to? And the answer is, no, you cannot possibly think that he changed the other way. Ditnan, ze gitech im mati, ze gitech mecholi ze, ze gitech lachar mita lo amar kelum. There's a Mishnah in Masechet Gitin, where if a man gives a get to a woman and says, this is your get if I die. This is your get if I die from this sickness. This is your get after I die. In all of these three cases, it's as if he said nothing. Now, for sure, in the last case, he says, this is your get after I die. Well, there's no way he can give a divorce after he dies. But even when he says, when I die or if I die, so here also it's no good. Why? It must be that when the guy is alive and he says, here's your get at death, what he means is, I want to remain married to you all the time that I am alive. And therefore, I only want this to happen after I die. So you see that when someone says something that it should happen happen at the moment of death, when does it actually take effect? After death. And here it cannot take effect because he's dead already. So too, we assume that a person means the same thing when he uses similar language and he says, I want to give this gift to that person, and he's on his deathbed. So we say that means, right, when I die. So just like regarding a get, if he says, I want this to be a get when I die or after I die, none of these things is good because it doesn't happen at that moment, but rather the moment after he actually dies. So too, when he uses such language and says, I want this to be a gift when I die, then that the gift happens a moment after his death. In the case of a gift, of a shechir mera, that works, because the rabbi said, right, we authorize that this can happen even without a transaction to put the guy's mind at ease who was on his deathbed, that his will be fulfilled. So generally it does work, but when does it work? It works only a moment after. And so since Abaye certainly knows this Mishnah, it must be that his original statement was that it happens with death, but then when he made the connection with this Mishnah, he realized, no, that's wrong, and it has to be a moment after death. And so therefore, Abaye is consistent, and now we know which way he changed his mind, and we have an answer to that question. This is why it will go to Mr. B in such a case, because even though A said that when I die, I want it to go to my friend, some other person, doesn't work, because at the moment of death, it goes to Mr. B, and the gift of the Shechibera happens only a moment after he died. Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha keraban Shimon ben Gamliel va'afilu hayu behen avadim v'osian lecherut. Rabbi Zera agrees, and then Rabbi Yochanan says also that halacha follows Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, meaning that the original owner, when he says, I want to go to A and then B, he is giving over the property itself, the ownership of the land itself. And that's true for movable items or for slaves, that he says, I'm giving that to A. A owns the items themselves, including the slaves. And that means that A has a right even to sell. Let's say if it's movable property, he can sell it. Or if it's slaves, he can sell the slaves. And once he sells the slave, they are sold. And when A dies and then it goes to B, just like he cannot go back and take the land, so too he cannot repossess those slaves. So even if it's slaves and he set them free, or sold them or set them free, that's it. Now they're free because A owns the items themselves. We ask, Peshita, isn't that obvious? He owns the things themselves. So he can sell the land, he can give away things, he can free the slaves. Oh, I need to say this because I might have thought that the original owner would say to A, listen, I gave you these things to use. I want you to enjoy them. But I did not give it to you so that you should make a violation with them. There is an opinion that of Rabbi Akiva that you're not permitted to emancipate an Eved Kena'ani. And therefore, by setting them free, he is making a violation. And so I might think that since this goes against the will of the original owner, that A cannot do it, and that's why Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Yochanan has to teach that he can do it, and if he does it, it is valid, and then the B can't go and get those slaves back. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha keraban Shimon ben Gamliel, va'afilu asan tachrichin lemet. Rav Yosef says, name of Rabbi Yochanan also. Halacha follows Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that whatever the original owner gives to A belongs to A, even that applies also to movable items, and even if it's clothing, and even if A used this clothing as shrouds to bury someone with, nevertheless it remains there. And when A dies and it goes to B cannot go and take them back. That would be weird to take them back anyway. Now Peshita, isn't that obvious? This is the same point, that A gets all the property itself, and therefore he can sell it, he can give it away, and he can use it for shrouds. No, I need to teach this because I might have thought that the original owner would say, listen, I'm giving you this clothing and all this stuff to you, A, to use for your enjoyment. I'm not giving it to you to put on a dead body. By doing that, it's prohibited for use. You can't use something that was given over as shrouds for a corpse. That's it. Now it's asur b'hana'ah. You cannot make any benefit. I didn't give it to you to make it for it to be prohibited from you benefit. I wanted you to benefit from it. So I might have thought that A does not have a right to do so. And so this teaches me not so. Once the deceased gives it to A, so that's it. It's a gift, and A can do with it whatever he wants. including making it a shroud or selling it or emancipating it, whatever, and then only what's left over will go to B. In this next section, we applied the same case of someone says, I'm going to give you this, and then it goes to A, and then it goes to B. We're going to apply this, instead of to land, to an etrog, as follows. Darash Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. Etrog ze, natun lecha b'matana v'acharecha lifloni. Someone has a nice etrog, and he gives it as a gift to Mr. A. This is a gift to you. And then after you die, Mr. A, I want it to go to Mr. B. Now, netalo rishon v'yasabo, banu lemachlok. Rabbi ve'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So A, let's say he takes it, he shakes it with his other three minim in order to fulfill his mitzvah. He does it on the first day of Sukkot. The first day of Sukkot is a special day because in order to fulfill the mitzvah, one needs to own the etrog himself, because the pasuk says, "Ulkartem lachem bayom harishon." Ulkartem lachem has to be yours on the first day. On the other days, then it doesn't have to be yours. So the question is, does he have actual ownership of the etrog itself so that he fulfills his mitzvah? So Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda said in this public lecture, this depends on the machloket between the Rabbi and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. According to the Rabbi, where when someone gives a gift like this, that it goes to A and then it goes to B, one only enjoys the use of the item, but not the item itself. There's not ownership over the land itself. Here, there is not ownership of the etrog itself, and therefore, Mr. A does not fulfill his mitzvah on that first day. Whereas, according to Rashbag, where when you do this kind of gift, it goes to A and then B, then you're giving the land itself in the case of land. Or here, the etrog, he owns the etrog itself, so he has fulfilled his mitzvah. That was Rav Nachman's chidush. Matkifla Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, but a different Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, rejects this statement of Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. And he says, Ad kan la piligi Rabbi, ve'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel hatam, ela demor savar kinyan perot ke kinyan haguf tameh. Omor savar kinyan perot lav ke kinyan haguf tameh. So he says, the machloket between the B and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel over there regarding the case of land, that's dependent on the following reasoning, which we saw 2 dapim ago, where, according to one of them, ownership of produce is like ownership of the land itself. That's the opinion of Rashbag. So he's giving over the produce, the original owner. I want you to own the produce, but ownership of the produce is like the land. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says ownership of the produce is not like ownership of the land. And that was their machloket. And so that's why it made sense over there. That will make a difference with if A sells the land itself. So if you say that ownership of the produce is like ownership of the land, then he can sell the land, otherwise not. The machloket applies there. Hacha, I mapik la I mepak la nafik be lemayahavi nehale. But in this case with the etrog, if A does not fulfill the mitzvah, mepak like nafak, to same as Hebrew yatsa yedei chova. If mepak la napik, if he does not fulfill his mitzvah, indeed, then what was the point of the original owner giving it to A in the first place? Isn't it obvious when you give someone an etrog, the etrog is not just to look at it or just to smell it. You're giving the person this nice etrog so they can use it for his mitzvah. And therefore, in this case, everybody would agree that he fulfills the mitzvah. Ela mepak tekule ama la pligi denafik be mechara ochala banu machloket Rabbi v'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rather, in terms of fulfilling his mitzvah, everybody agrees that, yes, he fulfills the mitzvah. So how does that work? It means that even according to the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who says in the case of land, giving of the right of the produce is not giving the item itself, but he would agree that here, that the original owner meant for Mr. A to receive the item itself, because he wants him to fulfill the mitzvah. And otherwise, why is he giving it? In the case of land, the original owner, we assume his intention is, listen, A, I want you to enjoy the produce as long as you live. And then I want someone else to enjoy it, not your heirs. So there it makes sense. He's giving him the produce, but not the land itself. But in the case of etrog, isn't it obvious that the original owner wants A to fulfill his mitzvah? In order to do that, he has to own the item itself. And therefore, at least to the extent that he can fulfill the mitzvah, he has to have exclusive use of it. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi would agree that he fulfills his mitzvah. Where is the machloket? If A sold it or ate the etrog, that would be be the difference between the B and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says he has full ownership over the item, and even though A's intention was that A should fulfill the mitzvah now, and then give it over to B, but b'di'avad, if he went and ate it or sold it, it's a valid sale because A owns it totally and can do whatever he wants with it. Whereas, according to the B, although A gave over, the original owner gave to A sufficient ownership to use it for a mitzvah, but not to sell it or to eat it because he wanted it to go to someone else after. And therefore, according to the B, the sale is not valid. And if A tries to sell it, B can go and get it back from the buyer. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, Hachin shekanu etrog betfusat habayit, netalo echad mehen v'yasa bo, im yacholoch lo yasa, v'im lav lo yasa. So Rabba, son of Rav Huna, said, let's say you have brothers who buy an etrog together from proceeds of an estate. These brothers, they have an estate, so the father died, and so they own something together, and then they, as part of that a partnership, they buy an etrog. So now, who does the etrog belong to? Well, let's say, I don't know. So one of the brothers takes it in order to fulfill his mitzvah. Does he fulfill the mitzvah? So it depends on the following criteria. If he would have permission to eat it, then he has permission also to use it for the mitzvah, and he fulfills it. But if he does not have permission to eat it, because they share everything, and one partner can't just take stuff without the permission of the other partner, then he does not have full ownership over it, and therefore he does not fulfill the mitzvah. But this is only true if there are enough etrogim in this shared ownership for every one of the brothers so that each one could fulfill their mitzvah. But if there was, let's say, one etrog and one quince and one pomegranate, even if they're all the same value, even if the quince and pomegranate are more expensive, and in that case, they would have permission to eat it because you could say, listen, I'm going to eat this fruit, you eat the other fruit, and the third brother eats the other fruit. Nevertheless, they still would not fulfill the mitzvah because everybody wants to fulfill the mitzvah of etrog, and if one of them takes it, then the other one cannot use it to fulfill their mitzvah, and so they would not want him to. So it has to be also that there are sufficient etrogim for everybody to be able to fulfill the mitzvah. In that case, all the brothers would be happy, so would not mind at all. Okay, you took this etrog, good, I'm going to take the other one. And so only in that case can they fulfill their mitzvah with jointly owned etrogim, because each one has the right to not only eat it if they wanted, but also to take it and use the mitzvah, because there's another etrog for the other brother to fulfill his mitzvah. Amar Rava, etrog ze natun lecha b'matana menat shetachazirehu li netalo v'yasa bo echziro yasa lo yechziro lo yasa kamashmalan de matana menat lechazir shema matana. Rava said, if somebody owns an etrog and he goes to his friend and he says, I'm giving you this etrog as a gift on condition that you return it to me. And then that friend who now has it, he takes it and he shakes it with his lulav. He fulfills his mitzvah. He shakes it in order to fulfill his mitzvah. He's attempting to. Does he fulfill it? It depends. If that friend returned it to the original owner, then he has fulfilled the condition, and therefore it is a valid gift and it works. But if he does not return it, then he does not fulfill the original mitzvah. That's a very interesting case. This is very practical because it can happen nowadays. If you have an etrog on the first day and you want to allow a friend to fulfill their mitzvah, but you don't want them to take it away and run away with it, you have to give it to them as a full gift. But how do you know they're going to give it back? So you could do this, and you could say, I'm giving this to you as a gift on condition that you give it back. So therefore, if he fulfills his condition, here, I gave it to you, and you shook it, and you gave it back, so then now we know it was a full gift, and you owned it totally. That works. But if I give it to you, and then you as a gift, and you take it and you don't return it, well, in that case, since the condition was not fulfilled, it was never a gift in the first place. This is stolen. And since it's stolen, you do not fulfill your mitzvah because you don't own it. And so this is a good way to guarantee that you can both allow your friend to fulfill the mitzvah, and you can guarantee that you'll have it back so that you can use it yourself. This teaches us that a gift that's given on condition that one return it is still considered a gift, even though it has strings attached. So you might say, well, if you have to return it, then what kind of gift is that? Nevertheless, for the time that he has it, it is fully a gift. and the other guy owns it, the gift recipient, and therefore it is valid. There was a certain woman who owned a palm tree on the land of Rabbi bar Abaye. Now she would go to take some dates from this palm tree, but every time she would do that, he would get angry. Oh, you came into my land, you're trampling on my vegetables here, and they got into a fight about it. So she didn't want to get into a fight with the rabbi, so she relinquished her rights to the produce of this palm tree. As long as he lived. She said, listen, Rabbi, as long as you live, I don't want to get into fights with you, and I relinquish my rights. I'm not going to take the dates. You can take them. Azal ihu akniye nihale libno katan. Now, what did Rabbi Bevai do? This nice woman, look, and she relinquished her rights to the dates. He then transferred those rights to his minor son, so that even after he died, now the son would have those rights. Was he permitted to do such a thing? I know she gave it to him. So now this will relate to the question that we had before, just like Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and the B were talking about, right? If the deceased, this original owner gave something to A, and then A sells it to someone else, but they were supposed to give it to B. Does that work or not? So this sounds like this would be the same thing. Amar Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua mishum da'atu memula'eh amri tumile muliyata. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, tells Rab Bevai. Rab Bevai apparently thought that it's permitted to do so. He's following Rashbag, and he says just like A can sell to someone else and B can't get it back, so too he's going to give this right of the dates to his son, and this woman won't be able to get it back. However, Rav Huna says, because you come from truncated people, that you say truncated words. He means that he came from the family of Eli, the Kohen Gadol, who was given a curse that he would die prematurely, he and his family. So he says, you're from the family of Eli, and you say words that are truncated, that you didn't think through them sufficiently. Even Rashbag, who said that if A sells it to someone else, then that's a valid sale. That's only true because he sold it to someone else. But if he sells it to his own son, that would not work, because that goes against totally what the original person had in mind. He says, I wanted it to go to A and then to B, to someone else. I didn't want it to stay with you. So specifically said, I didn't want it to go to your descendants. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is that in this case is different because the woman said, I want it to go to you, Rabbi Bevai, and then I want it back to me. Right? So because she says, I want it back, therefore, the Bevai has no right to give it to anybody else, not to his son and not to anybody else. There, even the Rashbag would agree that it goes back to the original owner. That's different from the case of the guy who says, after I die, I want it to go to A and then to B. So it's not going to go back to him anyway. It's going to go to someone else. So he dies. And then, since it's going to someone else anyway, A has full ownership and he can sell it to anybody he wants. If not, it goes to B. That's different if it's going to someone else, as if it's going to the person who gave it himself. Then it's more like a matana amenat hazir kind of. I'm giving it to Rabbi Bevai, but then I'm going to take it back. And therefore, Rabbi Bevai, in fact, did not have a right, even according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he did not have a right to give it over to his son. Amar Rav Nachman, shor ze natun lecha b'matana amenat shetacha zirehu li. Hikdish vechaziro harei ze mukdash u'muchzar. Rav, in the name of Rav Nachman, says an interesting law. If someone gives an ox to someone else and he says, I'm giving you this ox as a gift on condition that you give it back to me, right? It's okay, you can use it, gift totally. But then you have to return it to me eventually. Otherwise, it will not have been a gift in the first place. What did the recipient do? He consecrated it. He says, this is kadosh, right, to the Bet HaMikdash. And then he gave it back. So this is, in fact, given back, and it also is hekdesh. In other words, the recipient fulfills his obligation, fulfills the condition of receiving it and of giving it back, and therefore it is a valid gift. It was a valid gift. It went to the recipient. He owned it legitimately, and since he gave it back, it's called given back. Although it is also consecrated. So the idea is that he gives it back. Now, the original owner, what is he going to do with it? He can't work it because it's consecrated. But the recipient says, well, look, here's the ox. I gave it back to you, so I fulfilled the condition. You didn't say, if I have to give it back to you in this condition or not in this condition, here it is. Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman, Maya hadireh. So Rava challenged Rav Nachman and says, well, what did he give back? It's true, he gave back the ox, but it's not a usable ox. So what did he give back? Well, thanks, but no thanks. He gave back the ox, but I don't really own it because it's consecrated to Shamayim. Amar le umay chasereh. Rav Nachman, however, challenged back Rava and says, well, what did he cause him to lose? He returned the ox. So here it is, right? You just said return the ox. You didn't say return the ox in such a way that it will be mine so I could use it. He just said return the ox. So I didn't cause any loss. אלא אמר רב אשי חזנן, אי אמר לאמנת שתחזירהו האדרה, אי אמר לאמנת שתחזירהו לי, מידי לחזילה, כאמר לרב אשי has a compromised position. And he says, let's see, what was the exact language of the original gift? If he says, on condition that you return it, he returned it, right? It doesn't matter what condition it's in, even though it's not usable right now because it's consecrated, but he returned it. So he fulfilled his obligation. He fulfilled the condition. It was a gift. It is consecrated and it is returned. He doesn't have to give anything else. But if when he originally gave the ox, he says, on condition that you return it to me, the to me, the li added word means you have to return it to me in a way that is fit for me, that I can use it. I mean, it has to actually be mine. Mine means I can use it and however I want. But you gave it to me. It's true, you returned the item, but it now is consecrated, so you didn't return it to me in a way that I could use it. And so if he uses that language, then it is not considered returned, and therefore it was never a gift to begin with. It was never the recipient's to have it legally, and it wasn't his to even be able to consecrate. You can't consecrate someone else's property, and therefore it's as if there was never a gift at all, and A can just take it and keep it and use it. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.